everybody. Today is Saturday, February 8th, and the much anticipated arrival of Daffy's pups is here. Daffy, this is her first litter. She is a first-time mama. She did exceptionally well. We're so pleased with how she handled the delivery and how she's taken care of the pups and everything else. So she is recovering very well and managing her first time experience just as good as we could hope for. So she is an absolute darling and a sweetheart, and her pups are doing great. So Daffodil's teaching us a couple of things that we haven't experienced before, and that is that she is a later ovulator than what we have generally experienced. So we expected her pups last Saturday, and they did not start arriving until yesterday about 4 a.m. So it was kind of an all-night party anticipating those deliveries, and they started coming about 4 a.m. and finished up about 8 a.m. So it was very fun to deliver these and see them all arrive. They're all healthy and well. Everything went great. And so these pups are exactly 1 day old, and we haven't had a chance to finish kind of cleaning up Miss Daffy. She did really good with just keeping herself clean, but I am noticing right now there is a little spot of blood on her tail, that little black spot. And so if you notice that, that's what that is. It's just normal kind of afterbirth discharge that still needs to get cleaned up. She has been so focused on taking care of her pups. As you can tell, she is just intent on almost their every move. Something that a lot of people don't consider when it comes to dogs and temperaments and personalities. Everybody is very aware of having a dog that is people oriented and good with their intelligence levels and learning and taking commands and things like that. A lot of people don't realize that very important part of the breeder's perspectives is how well do they have a mothering instinct. Some dogs have great other instincts, such as for herding livestock or retrieving game, hunting and prey drive, things like that. A lot of people don't consider mothering instincts, and that's something that we're very aware of and keen about, because a mama taking care of her pups is super essential to the well-being of the pups overall. Now, that's not to say that if a mama abandons her pups that the pups are gonna turn out a whole litter of duds if the mama abandons them and just freaks out and doesn't do anything to care for her pups. That's not necessarily the case, but obviously if Mother Nature does things right with instincts and things like that, then having the mom take care of them is first choice. And if humans have to supplement or step in and cover any gaps, then that's the second choice, but not the worst thing in the world. So we're always pleased that so far we've had wonderful lines that have produced great parents, and these pups are no exception to the great quality of pups that we expect from the lines that we've been developing over several generations. So Daffy is a wonderful first-time mom. We have wonderful pups to share from her first litter, and I'm gonna start doing that now. So we want to give you guys an up-close look at all of them. We're gonna start with the girls. We have 3 girls and 4 boys to present to you. And the first one, we've got our notes. We track the litter and their progress and things like that. Obviously, we're always checking in on them, but we do track a few things. And so we're going to start off from our notes so I don't forget anything. And our first girl. So the list is in no particular order. We give them all colored collars so we can track them and notice any particular differences if we start to see things change over time with personalities or even just health and condition. You know, is one of them not gaining weight as fast as the others and things like that. So we give them all a color so we can pinpoint them fast and keep track of them. So as we give them a collar, then we start tracking them, but it's not in any particular order. So girls first on this list, and first we're going to start with Miss Teal. So we have teal, purple, and pink for the girls. Then on the boys we have orange, dark blue, who's snuggling over here, light blue, and Mr. Red for the boys. So Miss Teal is, I'm actually pretty excited to present her to you. She happens to be the smallest out of the litter. She's not abnormally small, definitely not a runt. She's 1 day old and weighs 0.83 pounds. So she's actually bigger than what we expect for pups at 1 day old. Our typical expectation for pups on the average is to be about 12 ounces, which is 0.75 pounds. And Miss Teal, she's 0.83 pounds, and all the pups are bigger than her. All these pups are just great size. They're started off big, and they're going to be, you know, just normal or above average size pups as they go. So Miss Teal, she's 0.83 pounds. One of the reasons why I'm pretty excited to present her first is she has won the award for our most marked pup on the chest. She just has this big, beautiful banner marking on her chest. And the reason why I think that's exciting is because some of the first Vizslas that came to the US, I believe, from my research, were pretty heavily marked. So Vizslas in general, over time, with the selective breeding and the purebred process, I believe here in the US, the trend has been towards less marked Vizslas. But obviously, in their genetics, they're going to have the genetics for those markings. So at different times, that genetic is going to be expressed heavier or less over time. And Miss Teal has won the award for being our most heavily marked pup to date. I'm gonna just kind of pause this video of our footage and show you some pictures online from the research I've done on the breed history and things like that of things that I've mentioned in past videos. I'm not sure I've included it though. So there was a family that brought in and imported some of the first Vizslas. As I'm doing this, I can't remember, it was the 50s or the 60s, shortly after World War II, and from the black and white photos of those dogs, we can see that some of them were heavily marked. So in general, from my research and looking at other Vizslas around the world through Facebook and things like that, Instagram, I do see lots of marked Vizslas in different ways. So breed standard allows for the markings to be on the chest and the feet, and it's pretty typical for us to see that occasionally. You know, I've seen other markings elsewhere, both in our lines and other people's lines, some markings that can manifest in different areas of their coat, but breed standard allows it for on the chest and toes. So that's what we aim for with our breeding program. Most of our dogs are less or lightly marked Vizslas, and it's always exciting to see some of that heritage show up through these other lines. So Miss Teal, she has that big banner marking, and she has a groin, some light hairs around her groin area. And then, I don't know if you can see this very well, it's going to be very hard to show, but on her back left toe, there's just some very lightly frosted toe tips there for Miss Teal. So Miss Teal had a lot of screen time. We're going to zip through some of the other ones. One other thing I want to mention about this litter is their coat colors are pretty consistent. I'm not seeing a super dark coat or a super light coat. You know, if I were to grade coat colors from 1 to 5, 5 being dark and 1 being super light, the Vizsla colors generally will be like a 2, 3, or 4. It's pretty rare to see a 5, which is super, super dark, or a 1, which is super, super light. And in our lines, we'll see, you know, a 2, a 3, and a 4 come through. All of these pups, I would say, are ranging in the 3 numbers, like a low 3 for a light color would be kind of a, you know, if I said 3.1, I'd call that Mr. Light Blue. And then if I said 3.9, I would call that Miss Teal. So not quite a 4 on coat darkness, and not quite a 2 on coat lightness. They're kind of what I would, so this is kind of my own color grading system I'm telling you about. That's not anyone else's system. I'm just kind of trying to quantify what I'm seeing and explain to you that there's a lot lighter Vizslas than Mr. Blue that can be in the 2 range, and then there's a lot darker than Miss Teal. But Teal looks a little darker, and Light Blue looks a little bit lighter. If I can get some of these other pups to kind of show us their backs, try to get them lined up side by side for you. So you'll see that the rest of them are kind of middle of the road pups. If you can see that from this vantage point, I think Miss Daffy's head is shading Miss Purple over here. She looks a little bit darker from the shadowing from Daffy's head. Miss Daffodil. So that's Miss Teal and some generic information about coat colors with this litter. Next we've got Miss Purple. So Miss Purple here, if I bring her front and center to the camera, she is 0.9 pounds and trends a little bit on the darker side like Teal, just slightly darker than some of her litter mates. On her chest, she has just the very hint of a dot right in the cowlick on her, and I see a very slight hint of a couple of white hairs around the groin area. I don't see any light markings on her toes though. So besides that very, very light cowlick area and very, very light couple of hairs around the groin area, Miss Purple is very lightly marked. So just a beautiful pup there. And next we got Miss Pink. She's the biggest out of the girls. She's 0.99 pounds. These pups are all doing great with nursing. You'll see them hop on and hop off of mom throughout this process. Miss Daffy's milk has come in very well, and the pups are taking full advantage of that. They're all taking turns with nursing. So I don't feel bad about pulling one off for the video, because I know that mama's got plenty of milk to go around. Miss Pink at 0.99 pounds, beautiful coat color, and she, if I turn her over, doesn't have any markings on her chest. She doesn't have any markings in the groin area. Her back toes are probably the most marked out of these girls. Her back right foot has a heavily marked toe there and a frosted tip on some of the other toes. And her back left foot has a few frosted toes there. So Miss Pink, very beautiful girl there. And next we're on to the boys. Let's see, I've got Mr. Orange. He's first on my list. Excuse me as I move around, I bumped the camera here. So Mr. Orange, he is just about the biggest boy. Orange and light blue are very large. Orange was 1.12 pounds and light blue was 1.14 pounds. So close together that really the difference is probably who did a potty last. It's probably the only difference between those two on size at the moment. So Mr. Orange, good sized boy, 1.12 pounds, and beautiful coat color. If I roll him over, we've got on his chest a little bit larger than Purple's dot. He's got a dot right on his cowlick, right in the center line of his chest. and then a very lightly marked groin, but more noticeable than the previous ones. And then he has a very lightly marked back right couple of toes, barely frosted there. So that is Mr. Orange. Beautiful boy, beautiful pup. Next we've got Dark Blue, and he is 1.1 pounds. So third place at the moment, but not by much. Very, very close to his brothers, and beautiful coat color for him. He has on his chest a marking, and his marking kind of goes laterally, kind of crossed from shoulder to shoulder, not really full spanning shoulder to shoulder. It's almost like he's a pilot and he's got his wings showing on his lapel, but more in the center of his chest. And so, and he's saying, "Where's Mama?" Let's see. Oh, and his groin is quite marked, more marked than some of the others. That's hardly noticeable, you know, as they get older, things like that. That's just not an area that you notice it very much. But his groin is more marked than the others. And toes, we're seeing clear toes on him. So that is, whoops, he's a wiggly one at the moment. They all are wiggly. They get kind of a milk coma right after they eat and they hold still, but if they're ready to nurse, then they get super wiggly. That's all of them. They just all want to wiggle until they've had a full belly. Then they get pretty docile. So, Mr. Dark Blue there. Next, we've got Light Blue, and he's in there nursing at the moment. I don't feel bad about pulling him off. He's a big boy. And so, Mr. Light Blue, he was 1.14 pounds, as I mentioned. So, happened to be the biggest out of the boys. At the moment, I'll be curious to see if he holds that pace that he's taking right off the start. So, and on his markings, his chest, he has more of a vertical stripe down kind of the left side of his cowlick. So, very distinct marking there. And he was also lightly marked in the groin. A little bit harder to see for him and things like that. So, not noticing any markings on his toes. And Mr. Light Blue is a little bit of a shade lighter than some of the other ones. So that's Light Blue. Next we've got Mr. Red. Little Red. He's not very, very little. He's 0.88 pounds. Bigger than average as far as litter sizes go. Average litter pup at 0.88 pounds. But for this group, he is smaller than his sibling brothers. So, sorry, I'm going to move the camera. Miss Daffy's foot is right by the bottom of the tripod. So, Mr. Red, he has a very handsome, bright, bold dot right center on his chest, right by his cowlick there. And he's slightly marked in the groin, not as heavily as some of the others. But he has some big, bold, beautiful stocking toe markings, especially on his back left foot. And on his back right, we see kind of a very hint of a frosted area on his back right, but I have to hold it just right in the light. So there's just a couple of hairs to notice that. So that is Little Red of Daffy's litter. So I'm gonna, now that they're all kind of huddling here, after a good little meal, I'm gonna set them all side by side again so you can see them really well. Daffy is gonna take a snooze, well-earned, well-deserved little snooze here, and tell you a little bit more about the process. You've noticed that they still have their umbilical stump here on their tummy. That's gonna dry up and fall off. That'll be gone in the next couple of days. Today's Saturday, and we've already got our appointment for Monday to have their tails and dew claws clipped. So a Vizsla tail, I'm going to use Miss Purple here for an example. It's breed standard on a Vizsla tail to remove the last third of the tail. And as you can see, if I get her tail kind of held out without my fingers disrupting the picture here, the Vizsla tail is not a big, stout tail, perhaps like a Labrador or some of the other dogs that have an actual purpose for the tail of like a lab, which was bred for retrieving on water, specifically the cold waters of Labrador is what they're named after up in Canada. They need that strong, bold tail, and they use it like a rudder for swimming in the water. Well, Vizslas, they can swim, they do have webbed feet, but that's not their purpose. And as you can tell with Miss Purple here, the last third of their tail actually tapers quite noticeably. And that last third is actually prone to injury. Vizslas are so happy and bouncy, they'll get that tail a wagging, and it gets long enough and thin enough as an adult, they can actually injure their tail. And if you've ever had a tail bleeding event, then you'll know why having less of a tail is important, because tails, when they bleed, they just flick blood everywhere. If you ever have heard the stories about Vizslas and tails that were not docked, and then they become injured and they have to subsequently go in and remove that last section of tail, it ends up they have a bloody mess all over in their car, in their house, or wherever, until they get that resolved. So injuries on tails can be common with Vizslas because it's just not a big, stout, long tail, so that last third gets removed and they don't hardly notice it. As you can tell, it's a very thin area. They do feel that process there at the vet. The vet has a very quick process, and it's kind of like ripping off a hangnail. Like for us, like if we have a hangnail and we got to rip that thing off or something like that, man, we feel that. But just in a minute or two, we hardly notice that hangnail was there. So as their dew claws get removed, I'm going to show the dew claw next. The dew claw is very small in relation to what the rest of their toes size are. It is just a fraction of a percentage of the normal size toe. If you notice that here on Miss Purple, she's going to get protested. I'm going to let her go back to eat and find somebody who's going to be a little more docile because they just ate. So Mr. Orange, he's going to be our demonstration for dew claws. So that dew claw, gosh, I would have a hard time saying that is even 75% of the size of the other ones, or 75% smaller. I bet that thing's 80% smaller than the other toes. So that dew claw here, it kind of looks like it would protrude out like a thumb on our hand, is what gets removed, and that gets clipped there at the vet's office, and they take care of that. They have a very quick process that they do for that, and like the tail, they do feel it, but it's more like a hangnail process. It's quick. It doesn't take the vet very long to do that. There's really no stitches per se involved with the process our vet does for that. Our traditional vet. I have seen other vets have a stitch that goes in the tail, but our vet has a process that the stitch is not necessary in the tail, and there's nothing necessary in the dew claws. And so basically by the time we get the pups to the car, after that process has been completed, the pups don't even know that it happened. And so they just move right along with life after that. They come home, they nurse, and they don't think a second about that process ever again. So it's very good to have it done when they're young and everything is small and there's very little overall impact to them as a whole. And then later in life, they don't have a problem with that thumb sticking out, and as they're running through the woods or brush or rocks or things like that, that thumb is very prone to injury. You know, as the dogs are running through things and that thing is sticking out kind of high up on the foot, that dew claw can snag on things And man, if you get an adult dog with a dew claw problem, that's a much bigger event later in life as an adult to manage after the fact. So that's why over the years, these purpose-driven dogs that were bred for hunting and running and things like that, over the centuries, like the Vizsla has, it's just expected that those things get removed because they can function fine without them. They don't need them, and the process of keeping them presents a liability in the long run. So that's why tails and dew claws get managed early on as the pups. So that's a little bit of the birth story of these pups. That's a close introduction of each one of them as well. And we're excited to have Daffy's pups here and to share them with you. Let us know if you have questions, and we'll give you weekly video updates as the pups progress, and we'll start the selection process when they are 5 weeks old, and they can start going home when they're about 7 weeks old. So that'll be the end, middle to end of, that'll be like the latter part of March. And so first part of April is when these pups be old enough to go home. So thanks for watching this video, and we hope to have you follow along as we share the progress of their growth and development journey with us here in our home. Until next time, thanks for watching.